a big part of Franklin's key for me was becoming a dad. She's real into books, and there was this sort of magical period of reading to her every night. And I was just kind of immersed in this world of Maurice Sendak and watching her sort of start moving as she learned to read into graphic novels. And I had been really into graphic novels as a teenager. And I guess there's sort of a funny thing where this is a little inside baseball, but maybe it's interesting. I mean, I guess that's what we're doing. I said we started as a dance clown theater company, and I've had a real chip on my shoulder about Pig Iron is for adults, that even though it's clown, it's for adults. And I think as a dad, I kind of started to get really excited about the books and television shows about Studio Ghibli and things that I felt like I'm excited reading this and you are excited reading or watching this. And I felt the impulse to like want to reach a different group of folks.
And welcome back to the podcast, the Broad Street Review Podcast, Season 10. I'm still blown away by how many conversations we have had this season alone. And we are taking a trip over to Pig Iron Theater Company to talk about the production of Franklin's Key, which had a presentation in 2025. It is coming back for the semi-quincentennial. And we will talk to some of the people who are bringing this production to the stage. We'll start with Dan.
Hey, I'm Dan Rothenberg. I am one of the founders of Pig Iron, and we've got a double anniversary because this is our 30th anniversary, and this is the big production of our 30th anniversary, alongside the 250 for the USA. And I am a co-writer and co-director of Franklin's Key.
Right, Jameka.
Hi, y'all. I'm Jameka. I use they, she pronouns, and I'm playing Temple in Franklin's Key, which I'm very excited to return to.
So welcome to you both to the podcast. Dan, just real quick, because I think this is the first time I've had a conversation with Pig Iron on the podcast. Yeah. And even though Broad Street Review has covered Pig Iron, tell our listeners a little bit about Pig Iron Theater Company.
Sure. I mean, we've gone through a few different chapters in this 30 years. We started the company very young, right out of college, like ages 20 to 23. And it was before the Philadelphia Fringe existed. And we started the company in order to go to the Edinburgh Fringe. The first 4 or 5 shows went to the Edinburgh Fringe, and we called ourselves a dance clown theater company. So we were interested in all those different forms, and some of the members had different trainings. Sometimes we called ourselves experimental or physical theater company. Almost all of our works are devised, which means that the actors are co-writers. Franklin's Key is an outlier, although that has happened 2 or 3 times before, in that it has a script that was written before. But since that time, we've made, 33 original plays in the 30 years and toured around the world. Definitely, I'm feeling middle-aged now. We've been running this grad program for 15 years. And I think for folks who are familiar with the Philadelphia Fringe, so many grads of our program have stuck around and made amazing work at the Philly Fringe Festival. I think that we were started in 95, the Fringe was started in 97, and the two kind of organizations have grown together from very scrappy roots.
Yeah. I have in my discovery, have noticed that there were pockets of time in Philadelphia where a handful of companies formed. What do you think was happening in 1995 that spawned your organization and organizations like Fringe Arts?
Wow. Okay. I was just joking with Jameka that this is stories from the previous millennium. And she was like, no, not the previous. I was like, oh yeah, it really is the previous millennium. So yeah, I mean, it's funny because, I'm so, a child of the 80s, graduating college in the 90s, and kind of still in touch with a kind of golden era of New York experimental performance from the 60s and 70s. Like those folks were older and still around and still doing stuff. Folks like the Worcester Group, Joseph Chaikin, who did the Open Theater, was a hero of ours. Filling in the 90s, I mean, there was a moment where the experimental companies, there was Pig Iron, Headlong Dance Theater, which had started a couple years before us, and New Paradise Laboratories kind of moved en masse from Virginia. We've had a few of things like that, like Ego Poe, I guess, also moved en masse after Katrina.
Yeah.
I remember that happening. And I mean, I think that Philly at that time, before cell phones, we had two alternative weeklies, and the cost of living here was a quarter of New York City. So what I thought then, and although Philly's gotten significantly richer and less like grumpy younger brother, like has its own character these days that it's proud of, I think it's even more true. I mean, I think New York has gotten completely unaffordable for so many artists of any kind. So, but we in the 90s were like, well, New York is a marketplace. And if you want to work with an ensemble or work with a community, if you're in New York or if you're in LA, everybody's got to have grace with the other people who have to take the best paying gig and the commercial gig in order to survive. And in Philadelphia, at least for a time, it was very affordable for artists who wanted to work in groups and artists who wanted to make non-traditional work. And we could still go up to New York and participate in festivals, go to the public theater, but not be spending so much of our, little pocket money on rent at that time.
Yeah. That's a good sort of snapshot because that is just an interesting thing to follow those trends and to see like what inspires creation and what inspires artists to plant roots here and then stay here. And that's great. That's great to know about 95. I'm wondering when the next time we're going to see a wave of new creative energy. Not that our companies aren't currently still pushing through, but to see like a resurgence and in sort of an abundance of new organizations. I wonder if it's going to happen.
Well, I mean, the Cannonball Festival,
Hmm.
is kind of growing into, and they have their own ethic and they're presenting at different times of year. And as I said, I mean, there's so many folks. We love that so many folks came to Philly to study with Pig Iron and then chose to stay. So I think those companies are really exciting to me. And they're not actually all theater. Like there's a couple of rock bands, there's people in cabaret and burlesque, there's people in comedy, and even in the kind of extended museum performance art world. So
Mm.
I'm still seeing a bunch of stuff. I went to a venue I'd never been to this past weekend. What was it called? God's Automatic Body and Spa? Like
God's
50
auto body and spa,
God's
I think.
God's Auto Body. Yeah. And Spa.
I've heard of it. I have not been there.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, cool. Another little venue.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like turning it over in my head when I was there. I was like, I think this is a former automobile body shop. And then they're joking about automatic body. And then they're making a joke about body and spa for this venue. And I was like, okay, I think I get it. I think I
I
get
love that for them.
Interesting. We'll have to do more research on that one. But okay, we're here to talk about Franklin's Key. Now that we've gotten this foundation of pig iron, tell us what inspired the creation that has become, that is Franklin's Key.
I'm just trying to think of the various, the longer story or the shorter story. I think I'll try with the shorter story. And if it's boring, let me know. I'll go more into the weeds. Um, I think that a big part of Franklin's Key for me was becoming a dad. And my daughter is 10. And actually, when we started working on Franklin's Key, believe it or not, she was like 4, I think, is when we started our first drafts. And, She's real into books. And there was this sort of magical period of reading to her every night. And I was just kind of immersed in this world of Maurice Sendak and watching her sort of start moving as she learned to read into graphic novels. And I had been really into graphic novels as a teenager. And I guess there's sort of a funny thing where this is a little inside baseball, but maybe it's interesting. I mean, I guess that's what we're doing. Uh, I, you know, I said we started as a dance clown theater company, and I've had a real chip on my shoulder about Pig Iron is for adults, that even
Mm.
though it's clown, it's for adults. And I think as a dad, I kind of started to get really excited about the books and television shows about Studio Ghibli and the things that I felt like I'm excited reading this and you are excited reading or watching this. And I felt the impulse to like want to reach a different group of folks.
Hmm.
And I guess I think also, it's a funny thing about, one of the things we pride ourselves on is being an experimental company without a house style so that we're always kind of reinventing ourselves. I think I was saying when we started and called ourselves a dance clown theater company, I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder that I wanted, even though the work was physical and sometimes called whimsical, I just thought this is not for kids. We wanted to address topics that weren't for kids and we wanted to cultivate an audience, that saw that even though there were sometimes very naive characters, there was that there were ideas in the piece, even if it was a play with no words, which we did in 97 and 99. But I think becoming a dad, I kind of realized that I'd become too cool for school in a way. And also that we were, I don't know, being part of the fringe for so many years, I think we were maybe speaking to the same people again and again. And I was really curious to try to reach a different group of people, um, and perform not during the fringe and, see what that conversation could be like and how that would change the art that we were making.
It's interesting that thought of like how to reach different people and not during the fringe, because we do tend to park in our brain that there are certain companies that we can expect to have an offering as part of the Fringe Festival. And then it's sometimes hard to see that organization in a different time of the year. It's just interesting that that is also a thought that you were thinking about as well.
I mean, I think it's the end result of what's mostly a mutually beneficial situation, which is that independent theater companies who don't have a theater that they're filling can reach so many people. The marketing reach of the Fringe Festival and the kind of cultural shift that goes on in the city where normie people, a part of the marketing of the Fringe to my mind is like, hey, normie people, why don't you try something a little weird this month? And so I think that allows a lot of really unique artists to reach more people than they would be able to at other times in the year. And for us, we make about one new work a year, and that might even be too much when you're mostly making things from scratch. So I'm hoping we were in the fringe in with Poor Judge that Dito, Van Rigersberg, Eva Steinmetz, Alex Bechtel made or led. And yeah, I'm hoping we're back there again. I mean, it does feel like home,
Hmm.
but yeah, we were kind of like, what would it be like to think about a different audience, basically, and not be thinking about that milieu of the fringe when we're making the work.
So, Jameka, you're playing Temple in Franklin's Key. Tell us about Temple.
Temple is really cool. I'm really excited to be able to return to her. This is going to be my first time doing a remount. I think this is just my first time in general being able to return to a character,
Hmm.
which is exciting, an exciting challenge and an exciting opportunity. But Temple, she's 16. She kind of has some of the weight of the world on her shoulders. She is dealing with a lot of adult problems, as well as high schooler problems. But she's also a scientific genius, very much immersed in that realm. And she has a discovery that kind of sets off the track for the rest of the show. I mean, so you get to follow her on a journey of not only like trying to chase down what her mind is telling her, but also kind of dealing with the things that I feel like we all kind of wonder about or kind of go through as adults of wondering who to trust, how to keep connection. And so those are the universal things that I'm really excited to re-explore inside of her, that I feel like are deeply woven into her tissue.
Yeah, I could definitely understand that being a challenge, being young and basically a genius, and people catching wind of that saying, like, there's probably people around going, how can I exploit that? They're
Yeah.
smart, but do they even have a sense of what they are holding on to? And sometimes age just prompts certain people to just take advantage. Like they believe you're not wise enough to understand. Let me shepherd you through. And and some people don't have the best intention.
Absolutely.
So, what is the journey that Temple goes on?
I feel like there's a lot happening for her. I think she has a journey of trying to find out what the core of this mystery is. She knows that her science, I'm trying not to reveal too much, but she knows that her science has kind of opened up a portal to something that is bigger than what she thought. And it has also opened up a level of power that she did not know existed. So she's also tracking that throughout her time on this adventure. But also, like, she is accompanied by her brother Arturo, who they have a relationship that I would frame, yes, brother sister, but also she has taken on a maternal figure role within their relationship because she's had to. So she's figuring out what it's like in order to step into adulthood prematurely and what it's like to balance that power dynamic. Um, her ex boyfriend shows up, and don't we just love when that happens? And so now he's tied to this adventure, which also she's dealing with the emotions of that. And what does it mean to forgive? What does it mean to trust in those situations? And then she also has all of these adults that she's running into in the course of this adventure that she also has to decide who is trustworthy, who values her brain, who is listening to her, and when is it safe to ask for help, and when is it safe or most safe to keep things to your chest. And I feel like that's the universality of it. Those are the things I'm still trying to teach myself.
Yeah.
When do you let other people help you fly?
Through the process, from the beginning and now returning into it, what have you learned about yourself through exploring Temple?
Yeah. I feel like whenever I started Franklin's Key last year, I actually went to York before she closed down. And pig iron, we talk about pig iron a lot. And I was so afraid of pig iron. I was very much like, I am not a physical actor. I could never do the things that they did. Even in my movement classes, I always felt as though I was not engaged with my body. I'm neurodivergent, so that's something that I don't know. There's something about the mind body that I just felt disconnected to. And so whenever I was starting production, that was something that I had a concern about. But I feel like when I was able to take on Temple, that's whenever I learned that I actually am a very physical actor. And now I would say that that's probably one of my strengths now. Like it's something that I always look to engage with in my art is physicality. What are the proclivities this person has? What are the ways that they move, the way that they breathe? That is the most interesting thing to me now when watching other media.
It's like there's something very powerful in the discomforting spaces, as we
Yeah,
felt uncomfortable there because it's probably where you need to be.
exactly. It doesn't feel
We
good
have
while
to
you're there.
sort of convince ourselves. I mean, that's of course there's situations. I think when it comes to something creative, it's like, there's sort of this like if I do attempt this, what happens? And if I don't, what do I miss out on?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's the excitement of it all.
Yeah. So back to the piece as a whole, there are interesting elements that are coming together to tell this story. And Dan, if you could talk about how movement plays a huge role in the telling of this story.
Sure. I mean, I think there's two things to think about. I mean, first is we are trying to translate an 80s movie to the stage. Like that's some of the inspiration, sort of the way Stranger Things was inspired by those Spielberg movies and by Back to the Future and The Goonies and Ghostbusters. Those were the movies I grew up with. And Probably. It's interesting. We collaborated with illusion designers for the first time, magic designers, but most of the magic is sonic, is the word. Yeah, the way that people moving with very evocative sound in a way that is synced, and then that creates the image in your head of what is happening. So like over the course of the play, Jameka's character finds some technologies that give her more and more special powers, and we create that with a mix of illusions, but sound is doing most of the sound meeting movement is really how we convey that. And then there's a kind of a fun, and I don't think this is unique to Franklin's Key. I think probably even Pig Iron has used this before, but there is a movement ensemble of characters called the Gogglers, who are kind of the spirit of the city and the spirit of the mystery. And so they are moving all the scenery around the protagonists. So on the one hand, there's something just very functional about that, right? We're going through all these different settings, but I think of them as sort of a cross between the fairies in A Midsummer Night's Dream, which, are often the trees of the forest and invisible to the lovers. And there's this great Miyazaki movie called Howl's Moving Castle, and there's a witch who has these blob men who are kind of supernatural functionaries, and that we can't quite tell who they're serving. Do they serve her? Do they serve the fates? And they kind of melt in and out of the ground and hide among the crowd or hide in the architecture. And so, yeah, about half the cast is either doing double duty as gogglers or is mainly gogglers. We have these great movers, including Ben Greenberg from Almanac and Makoto Hirano, also from Team Sunshine. And both of those folks have been in some Pig Iron shows before. But yeah, that's how some of how movement works.
And so this was presented in 2025. What was the response then? What was the feedback you received from people experiencing Franklin's Key?
I mean, our favorite feedback were people maybe just a little younger than me who said, I brought my kids and I brought my parents, and everybody had a really good time.
Yeah.
And it's just been kind of funky to try to communicate that the show is family friendly, but not children's theater.
Mm.
I think some of the other things we really liked are, yeah, I mean, it was great to see the response of kids like 8 to 12 and hearing from parents 2 weeks later, going, my kid is still talking about it. They're still talking about the play. They're still talking about the character. Um, and that was really great. And then I guess also it was so interesting for us to work with Skylar Fox and Michael Cross, who designed some of these illusions, which they're so funny. They're like, these are illusions that have existed since the 19th century. Like they're not high tech illusions, but that's actually turned out to be very rare on Philly stages. And I think people were like, oh my God, I can't believe, I don't know how that's happening. And all magic designers will swear you to secrecy and say, you must not tell people how it is done. And I've been pretty good about that. I was just speaking to a high school class and showing them some of the illusions on video. And they were like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I'm not allowed to tell you. International code of magic that I've been inducted into.
Perhaps that mystery encourages them to come back and try to
Yeah.
process it. It's
I
like
mean,
it's like magic tricks. Yeah. Let's see. How, as you were pulling this together, how did you choose what landmarks to become part of the story? Because there's so much tied to Ben Franklin that I mean, he almost
yeah.
unofficially gets credit for everything.
Okay. These are some kind of crazy stories. Because we did start with some research and we took tours of Christ Church. Ben Franklin joined multiple churches because he wanted to do experiments on their spires, which were the tallest spires, the tallest structures. So he joined a bunch of different churches. So, Ben Franklin is buried in the Christ Church burial. Okay, so the two things that we really of interest in terms of picking up on those were, the first was we actually met the person. I don't think he works there anymore. Who works for who worked at Christ Church, and he's the person that maintains all of the graves. And he kind of gave us this monologue about how he talks to the people who are buried, to Ben Franklin and the other folks who are buried in that graveyard.
Mm.
And he almost made it sound that he goes down into the crypts and like has these philosophical conversations with these people from the 1700s. And we kind of loved that idea in thinking about how do we turn Philadelphia into this clockwork of puzzles. So that guy, the grave digger, became a figure in the play, like someone who's, talking to, because they have a personal relationship to the founding fathers and to the ground and to the mechanism and knows things about it. And then I have to say, and I don't know how it's happening since now it's under new management, but we knew the Wanamaker organ is, and at the time when we started working on it, it is the largest working organ in North America. And you hear that, but then some people know about it and they're like, that's a part of my Christmas. I go all the time, but like it's 5 or 6 stories tall. It's just kind of amazing. And someone who worked with pig iron knew the folks who maintained it. Hidden inside of Macy's at the time was this little team of 4 artisans who, over the course of the year, are refurbishing the pipes. There's wooden pipes and there's metal pipes, and they're walking up little walkways, almost like you're in a 19th century boat or something with these, and they're doing like old crafts, they're doing old craftsmanship to maintain this organ. And it really did feel like a special secret thing in Philadelphia. And that became another one of the landmarks that actually hides a very important Franklin secret in the show. And so it kind of was from research in the sense and going in person and being inspired by the encounters with people at some of these places. And City Hall is just, I don't know about you, but I see that building so many times a year.
Mm.
The city still is set up in such a way that you look down Broad, look down Market, look down Ben Franklin Parkway, and it's just there. And especially that statue and that clock. And that feels like something that Philly folks really know about.
Yeah. I think we were at Sister Cities Park or somewhere over there, and there was sort of a cutout between these buildings that was like a perfect view of the top of City Hall. And we were saying to ourselves, I wonder if that was planned, So I do
Mm.
think about those things when you're talking about height, because most of the time you have to cut down some height because of what the obstruction does or what the shadow does to a part of town. Like there's all these things that are often factored into, those things, even though we're way past the gentleman's agreement
Yeah.
in terms of the height.
Yeah.
So the semi-quincentennial, it's so hard to say. Soon we'll be saying tercentenary.
Woo.
How does how do you feel about this piece in this moment and the significance of it and all of the stories that have come before it?
Mm.
I guess I'll put that to both of you.
Yeah. I mean, I can start, as I said, we worked on it for quite some time and kind of as it stretched on, it was sort of realizing that the piece was going to land on the semi-quincentennial was kind of a perfect alignment of the stars. But I guess a word that I like to be associated with pig iron is irreverent. And I feel like I am not a history buff and that there's a kind of like piety that comes around some of the American history stuff in Philadelphia in particular that I find extremely dull and pushes me away. So I would say in relation to that history about the founding fathers, in this play, because it's a sci-fi version of it, I think about the TV show The Watchmen or something where it imagines that Vietnam or Korea becomes the first state as part of it's a whole other universe basically, or um, that by making it strange and holding it askew and having people in that universe who are looking at history, but they're seeing something different than what we see, that maybe it can come to life a little bit more. Like one of my favorite lines between Temple and Arturo is they come across a statue of Ben Franklin, like
Yeah.
hidden under some blankets. And they're like, is that Ben Franklin? And he's like, yeah, it's Philly. Ben Franklin. Like, we're tired of hearing about it. So hopefully the characters acknowledging that allow other people. It's just like when people talk about Ben Franklin and William Penn, and we were making a joke about Philly is the birthplace of birthplaces. The way it's like the birthplace of democracy, the birthplace of
Very true.
scientific inquiry, and it's like it just feels like a pageant, you know. And I think trying to give it a little bit of the Ghostbusters and Harry Potter treatment is a way of sneaking in, like, oh, it's actually pretty cool. The Wanamaker organ is like weird and cool. And yeah, there are these people from the 1700s who did a bunch of things. There's somebody who thinks they go down into the crypts and has imaginary conversations with them. Like, so in a way, as an American story, it's sort of on the one hand, I think it's very similar to the Goonies and Ghostbusters of like young people are going to build the future. But in this case, it's in this backdrop, against this backdrop of all this history and secret societies. And I feel like fundamentally, the show is saying that we need to let the young lead us into the future, and that the history of America does not belong to the white male founding fathers. Like, and Philadelphia does not belong to them. It belongs to, people say, like, so who plays Ben Franklin? I'm like, there's nobody who plays Ben Franklin in the show. Like, they're talking about Ben Franklin in this sort of sci-fi way, but in ways that are similar and not similar to what was real. But yeah, that's my long answer to that. And I'll be really curious what Jameka has to say.
That's a great answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jameka, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like as someone that was not born here, I was originally born in North Carolina, but I've spent my time since college. I fell in love with the city. It's the reason why I stayed. Yes, it is a little irreverent. Like, we're not like, did you know? Like, we're not trying to just lift up facts to our audiences, but it really is a love letter to the city. I feel like we often navigate the city as people that live in it without acknowledging just how much history that we have underneath our feet. And I think that it's a beautiful way to kind of honor how much beauty actually surrounds us, how much we actually don't know. And it's really an honor to be able to be leading a production as a person of color that is so curious about unearthing that is so smart. And I just feel like with the temperature of everything that is happening in America, that this story is really important, and a really important story for people of all ages to see. But I hope that people that are still growing, the people that don't have their prefrontal cortexes fully developed, are able to come and see this show and are excited not only about the city that they live in, but are excited to continue to be curious, to ask questions, to poke at authority, and to feel armored and held in that by the people that are helping foster their growth.
That's a great thought as well. It's just a conversation of great thoughts to bring this all forward. Is there anything else you'd like to say about Franklin Key before we sign off?
I think the cast is really amazing. Like, I've really enjoyed working with Jameka. This is my first time working with her, and so appreciate your way of thinking about this, and performing this wonderful weirdo character who's like got a spark and curiosity. I just I like sharing the piece with people because of how tightly the cast works together, and how, like, even the people who play five small parts, like those small parts, I think are really done at such a high level that is great. And yeah, I do think people feel in really good hands when they're with this ensemble.
Great. And soon you will have another chance to be amongst all these artists telling this story of Franklin's Key. It'll be on stage June 11th through the 28th, and that'll be at Plays and Players Theater. If you want to find out more about Franklin's Key, you can go to franklinskey.com. If you want to find out more about Pig Iron Theater Company, you can go to pigiron.org. Jameka, thank you so much for taking the time to unpack Franklin's Key. And I'm excited to experience it in June along with everyone else who is listening and excited. So thank you so much for chatting with
Really
me.
great conversation, Darnell. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. This was truly a pleasure.